Equations Part 2. We're going to extend the knowledge from the PowerPoint and videos you watched in Equations Part 1 and really focus on that logic to make sure you guys have some really strong understanding. So first we're going to make sure you know how to solve equations when we have distribution on both sides and variables on both sides. So in general, your first step that you should sort of check is 1, clean up the distribution if you see it, okay? That should always be a good first instinct when it comes up to solving equations. Now we know we have distribution when we see something outside of a parentheses, like that negative. Now if you don't see a number outside with the negative, we assume it's a -1. Just like I don't see a number with the x, so I assume that's a -1x. Now whenever you see that distribution, when you see a number right outside of a parentheses, we need to complete that little rainbow multiplication. It's like 2 multiplication problems in 1. I'm not going to touch this left side at all. That -4x is not being distributed, just that negative with the assumed 1. So far, I've just written down everything except for my distribution now. -1 times 2 is -2. When one number is negative, your answer is negative. A -1 times -1 becomes a +1x. Okay, so we just cleaned up the distribution. Now we should do a nice check of, can you combine like terms that are already on the same side, okay? The same side. So I'm gonna zoom in over here, 33 and 4x. Those are not like terms. This has a variable, this is a regular number. Those can be combined. They would both need an x, or they would both need to be regular numbers. So over here, I see -4x. Don't forget that negative goes with the 4x. And the +1x, they each have letters, so I can combine those. -4x plus 1x will be -3x. I haven't touched that -2 yet, and I haven't done anything to the left side. Okay. So I did my distribution, I combined my like terms that I could, and now I have no like terms on the left side, I don't have any like terms on the right side. So now we want to get the variables to the same side. Oops, variables to the same side. It does not matter if you move the 4x over or the -3x over. You will get the correct answer either way. So I'm gonna move the -3x. If it's a -3x, I'm going to add that 3x, because now that I'm going across the equal mark, I have to use my inverse operations. Notice up here, when I combined like terms, they were already on the same side. So I used -4 plus 1. I didn't do anything opposite. But here, since I'm going to the other side, I have to do the opposite. So we'll end up getting 33 plus 7x equals, that negative goes down there with the 2. I'm going to circle x, because now I need to get rid of the 7 and the 33. After your variables are to the same side, it's time to isolate the variable, okay? So we need to get rid of the 7 and the 33. Keep the close friend, that 7, until the end. Get rid of the far away friend. So I'll subtract the 33 from both sides to get -35. When we subtract a negative, it's like adding to a bigger negative number. 7x, since there's nothing in between the 7 and the x, that's multiplication. So 7 times what number is -35? Or we can use our inverse operation of dividing and get -5. Because when we divide, if one number is negative, the answer is negative. One more nice big equation here. Okay, so we made some nice steps in our last one, and these are generally going to be your go-to steps whenever we solve equations. So first, let's clean up some distribution, which we know happens when you see a number outside of parentheses, okay? So in this case, I see 2 batches of distribution, one on each side. I see the 7 outside of the parentheses with nothing in between it. Oops. And I see that -8. Remember, we read equations like a book from left to right. So that negative goes with the 8. So that's like a negative 8. That also needs to be distributed, okay? That n has nothing to do with the 7, so it will come on down. 7 times 4 is 28. 7 times 5n is 35n. Distribution is done. The n came down, multiplied. Over here, same thing. The 6n won't be touched yet. Negative 8 times 1 is negative 8. When one number is negative and multiplying, the answer is negative. Negative times a negative is a positive 24n. Anytime the signs match in multiplication, we get a positive number. So once again, the n came down, multiplied. The 6n came down, multiplied. Now we're done with our distribution. Now we need to see if we can combine the like terms already on the same side. So I'm going to zoom into this left side, and I see a regular n and a 35n. If I don't see a number out front, I assume there's a 1. So 1n plus 35n is 36n, and I haven't touched that plus 28. Since they were on the same side, I didn't do any opposites. I kept that positive 1 plus 35. Going to the other side now. I see a 6n and a 24n. Since they're on the same side, I don't change anything. 6n plus 24n is 30n. That negative goes with the 8, and it's going to come on down. So I combined my n's over here, 28 came down. I combined the n's over here, the negative 8 came down. So we cleaned up our distribution, we combined our like terms, variables to the same side now. It does not matter if you move the 36n or the 30n. I'm going to move the 30n. Since that's positive, we're going to subtract. We have to do the opposite now. We're going to the other side of the equal mark. We haven't touched the plus 28 yet. We haven't touched the negative 8 yet. Now we have two numbers in order to isolate. We need to get rid of the 6 and the 28. Always start with the far away numbers, the number without the variable. Since we're going to the other side, we're using the opposite of subtracting. 6n is multiplication, so the opposite is division. And when we're dividing, if one number is negative, the answer is negative.